Well, you're very welcome to the Betfred Boxing Show with myself, Dom McGuinness. As ever, Anthony $1 Million Crolla. He insists you call him $1 Million. Nothing else will do these days. And also joining us today is Boxing Socials Rob Tebbutt. So, fellas, I know it's been a busy weekend that we just witnessed. We're going to look ahead to all the action as well. But again, some great action over the weekend.
Some fantastic action. I think it was a great first night of fight camp. I think myself and Robbie was just saying before, wasn't we? The first night of action at fight camp possibly be the best bill. It might do well to top that. But I think it was a card that had everything. You know, we had professional debuts, we had upsets in Jack Cullen against Children. When I say upsets, I think Cullen was the betting favourite, but I think to most people in the boxing world, it was seen as a bit of an upset. Another upset in the main event, more importantly, with Lee Wood putting a fantastic performance to put his name up there with the elite of the division. So I'm sure we'll go through the card in a bit, but yeah, great first night. Fight Zone, there was some fantastic performances there. Daniel Collins, he picked up the Commonwealth title in that division. I think Sutherland, which you said earlier, Dom, very, very accomplished performance. I think it was a great weekend of action.
Well, Rob, you can give us the insight into fight camp in just a minute, but in terms of the Fight Zone card, that obviously Fight Zone rolled into Scotland on the road. It was a fantastic occasion to be there. It was really well received by the locals in Hamilton. And as you touched on, Nathaniel Collins, he won a Commonwealth title against Felix Williams, who we have seen on these shows against Josh Wale. He was beaten a couple of years ago, but he wasn't quite there on the night. And Collins, he did what he had to do, didn't he? And also some other the standout performances. I think, you know, Billy Stewart came up a little bit short against Gonzalez, but Dean Sutherland looked so mature, so composed.
Yeah, I think as we mentioned earlier, Dom, Sutherland was very impressive, and he's someone who we're going to be very keen to keep an eye on. Great prospect, handled it really well, shown maturity. Moving on to Collins, Bill Topper. Like you say, opponent was a little bit disappointing. However, Collins done the job asked of him, and he's picked up the Commonwealth title, and that, which I mentioned earlier, the holders of that in recent times, of what they've gone on to do. If it's anything half as well as them, he's going to have a successful career. Really happy for Nathaniel Collins. And it was, again, that was a card. We nearly saw Scott Williams. He had his moments. Nearly picked up that first win. But the opponent, like you say, was a much-deserved winner, and you could see him back to winning ways after being in there with Tommy Fury. But no, again, I think as we're going to get onto the fight card, it was a card that had very much a little bit of everything. Billy Stewart just falling short. He's got some good wins, Billy Stewart, but he can come again for sure. You know, he's a baby, and he come up against a very good opponent. Just come up short, handled himself very well, and we'll certainly see him again.
Yeah, some good action on there. And as I said, it was just good to see a crowd in Scotland again, because the restrictions have been slightly tighter there in Scotland than they have been in England. So there was a bit of an easing there, and you could tell that everyone was really delighted to be out again. So it was always good to see. And of course, at Fight Zone has another card. Moving on again, it's London this week, York Hall, and top of the bill is a Southern Area Eliminator. It's Lewis Isaacs against Dan Morley as well, which is a brilliant 50-50. Plenty more on that bill. Can touch on that a little bit later on. But moving on, and of course, it was, as you touched on at the top of the show, Anthony, Fight Camp. Fight Camp was back. It was Eddie's Garden again. Slightly different now that there's no Sky. It's just DAZN. I don't know that you've been involved with you were involved with the whole build-up with all of that, Rob. You were involved, the pressers and everything else. And was there a feeling of normality?
Yeah, I think there was. Just as we were speaking slightly before we came on air about, you know, just those little bits that we've missed out on in the last 18 months. Just little things like having a slightly more packed out press conference, a few more media there, a few more team members there. The weigh-in, I loved seeing Sandy Ryan on her debut getting really in there. And a nice close face-to-face. I think, you know, those 2 meters the 2 meters apart head-to-head with the masks on, you just lose that little bit of tension that we've missed for the last 18 months. So it was really, really good to see that back. And of course, you know, having fans in Eddie's back garden was a little bit of a strange look, but I think everybody who attended on the night seemed to really enjoy themselves. I think everybody enjoyed the free bar. And it seemed like there was a lot more fans in there than 300, particularly, as I'm sure we'll come on to talk about in a minute, when Little Lever's meat cleaver, Jack Cullen, was against Abney Yildirim. He brought, I think, 30, but it sounded like he brought 10 times as many down with him. So it was great. And as I've said, you know, those little bits and pieces out throughout the fight week that we've missed for the last 18 months, they really do add up. and make the show a lot more watchable when it comes down to the Saturday night.
Yeah, Anthony, you've been involved in some interesting build-ups in the past with stablemates of yours. When you think of Scott Quigg when he was fighting Carl Frampton, and Joe Gallagher, your trainer, obviously Scott's trainer was up against Shane McGuigan and Barry McGuigan, and it was all it was very, very interesting. It was great fun. Now we had a little bit of that, but it's very different, a very different thing now with Frampton and the McGuigans, and him turning up at fight camp. It added a little bit to it, a bit of needle, a bit of an extra dimension to the whole thing, because it was meant to be about Chris Billam-Smith and Tommy McCarthy, but it kind of got overshadowed a little bit in the build-up.
That was great content. It was brilliant, and I think it added that extra bit of sort of spice to the fight. But like you say, it was about the lads, and they delivered on the night. I thought they put in a fantastic fight. Fight the night for sure. Very, like you say, a lot of people could have gone either way. I don't think we could argue with the decision whichever way it went. But both boys delivered. Billam-Smith, they set a pace. Especially for two cruiserweights. And it's a fight I wouldn't be surprised if we see it again. I'd certainly like to see it again, because I think both lads, they've been in great form recently. I was saying just how much both have improved over the pandemic. Two of the most improved fighters over it in Tom McCarthy and Chris Billam-Smith. Whereas now I think they'll look to settle at European level for a few fights before then making a charge at world titles.
Great to see a lad take his opportunity as well with the top of the bill. And I know it should have been Ben and Granados originally, but we know the story behind that and COVID. But, Lee Wood against Xu Chan was always possibly the show stealer anyway. And he took that opportunity, and he's now a regular world champion.
That was the fight that I think most boxing fans was looking forward to. And I thought it was punch perfect. And I think you've got to give credit to Lee Wood. It's just how quick boxing can turn around. I was there the night he lost to Jazza Dickens, in which was seen as a slight upset that night. A lot of people fancied Lee Wood to go the full way, and he's turned it around. Opportunity come reasonably short notice, and he boxed the perfect fight. So credit to Lee Wood, and also credit to his team, Ben Davidson, who's in great form at the minute with his team at the Performance Centre. No, really good. Obviously, Rob, he was up there close, but I was just really impressed with how controlled he was throughout. And for me, the jab, which in a lot of fights was the difference. The little stab downstairs, just a very educated performance.
Yeah, just to further on that point, I agree with Anthony there. I mean, a lot of people spoke about Lee Wood's power going into the fight, which I think certainly was a factor. We all know about Xu Can's activities, one of the busiest, if not the busiest fighters in boxing. And I think, yes, the punching power had something to do with lowering that punch output, but also, as Anthony says there, the stab to the body, the jab to the body, the feints. I was really impressed with I know it's kind of an overused term these days, but the ring IQ of Lee Wood, I felt like he was offsetting Xu Can, never allowed him to really close that distance. I think the punching power was certainly a part of that, but also I was very, very impressed and, happily admit, quite surprised with the level of skill shown by Lee Wood. I don't think he ever really panicked in there. This was, of course, a sizable step up for him to world level. Took it on short notice, and he never really looked phased. He went through the gears, even right up to that last round when, by all accounts, he had the fight in the bag. When the opportunity came for him, he really stepped on the gas. I thought it was a very impressive, a mature performance from Lee Wood, and especially impressive considering he's not been at that level before. So, yeah, I agree with Ant. I think that the jab to the body, also when he switched southpaw, he was throwing a lovely straight left hand to the body from the southpaw stance. Xu Can, to me, just really didn't look like he knew what to make of Lee Wood at all in there, and it was a great performance from him.
Yeah. You mentioned before Sandy Ryan, her debut. We'd heard a lot about her, of course. I know you know a little bit about her as well, Ant. I think Sean O'Toole, Paul Reddy, they're looking after her as well. But also a word about Campbell Hatton. So the two on the undercard, if you like, that were there just at the very early stages of the career. How did you assess their performance?
Yeah, I think Campbell is improving fight by fight. Listen, he's got a long way to go. And I think anyone, who knows boxing, the team around, there'll certainly be no rush. But there is improvements. I think a lot of Campbell's learning is going to be done away from the bright lights, and I think they've got to take the time with him. But there is improvement, and that's the main thing in Campbell. There's huge pressure, huge expectation on the lad, but the main thing is improving fight by fight. The other fight we just mentioned then was Sandy Ryan. Listen, that was a pretty ambitious debut as well, because Christy Hamilton, you know, it was certainly no walkover, and up at 6 rounds as well. And I thought she picked some lovely shots out. And I'm interested. I think I was saying it last week, just how I like to see Paul Reddy, Sean, but more Clifton Mitchell, what he speaks about. Clifton knows boxing, and he thinks he's a world champion in waiting. So I'm very keen as well. I know they're going to fast track her, not at a crazy pace, but I'll move her a little bit faster than normal. And I think she's a great addition to the women's game.
So, DAZN, what do you make of the coverage, Rob?
Well, obviously, I was at the event, so I didn't get to see too much of the production. When I did go back and watch some of the fights back, I actually went back to watch Campbell Hatton because unfortunately I missed him. But I felt like it seemed fresh. It seemed new. Obviously, any kind of new venture will have its teething problems and things that I'm sure internally DAZN will feel worked and didn't. I was very happy with Chris Lloyd on the comms as a lead commentator. I think Chris is excellent. Of course, we are waiting the granddaddy of them all, Mike Costello, to return from the Olympics. I'm sure everybody's looking forward to him making his DAZN debut. Andy Lee is an analyst. You know, he's one of the probably one of the sharpest boxing minds going. And then you've got a bit of Darren Barker as well in there, who's kind of retained this youthful exuberance for boxing, even after being in boxing for so many years. So I think from a production point of view, it looked great. Certainly the Matchroom HQ, Matchroom Square Garden, was dressed to the nines itself. I think the ring walks looked fantastic. So yeah, a lot to be excited about. I think, as I say, I think there'll be certain things that they'll trial and they'll find their feet as they go. But yeah, a nice fresh start for boxing, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of exciting additions moving forward with regards to the coverage.
Yeah, well, it marches on, doesn't it? Because it's week 2 of Fight Camp, of course, and again, it's a build that's topped by a really intriguing one. They've done it before, back in 2013, but there's so much more on the line now. It is, of course, Kid Galahad and Jazza Dickens going head-to-head for that vacant IBF featherweight title. It's an enormous opportunity for these two lads, and I know you know them both well, and I've been lucky to see them to kind of, particularly with Jazza actually recently. I've seen a bit of sparring with him and Akib Fiaz, who's also on the bill. It's been really sharp, really interesting to watch. I mean, both lads have moved on. We know what Kid's all about and his awkwardness and everything else, and again felt a little bit slighted by not getting another crack at Josh Warrington. Here you are, brilliant opportunity. So how do you look at this one now?
Do you know what I do? I know both lads well. Please don't ask me to pick a winner. I'll sit on the fence. I've never sit on the fence normally, but I genuinely would struggle to pick a winner. As in, I'm sure I'd like to hear what you and Rob think, which way you go. But from the first fight, both have improved dramatically. I think both are much better at the weight above. And then it's when you start adding things up. I was talking with the lads in the gym just before. You've got the lad we've just mentioned, Lee Wood. You know, Jazza won well that night. He won well that night. He was very good in the Golden Contract. Beat another very good lad in the final in Ryan Walsh. But then at the same time, you know, with Kid Galahad, he's someone who they both absolutely live and breathe it. So dedicated, two of the most dedicated professionals I've ever come across. Listen, I think after the first fight, I think you would make Galahad the favourite for sure. But then there again, Galahad come from behind against a fighter in Jazza Dickens, who I didn't believe was a super bantamweight at the time, who was up on the cards. It's just, if you have to bet, I'm really the wrong man, or even to pick a winner, because it's so tight. It's so tight. And I think one of them, again, it could come down to the scales. Who does the weight the best? Could win on Saturday night. That sounds like a cop-out, but I really believe it's that tight.
Yeah, I think not to sit on the fence as well, but everybody who I spoke to in the bubble last week, you know, I was asking people what their viewpoint was going to be on Galahad versus Jazza Dickens. And I think it's fair to say that due to the inactivity of Kid Galahad and conversely the form of Jazza Dickens, getting those wins over Lee Wood, getting those wins over Ryan Walsh in the Golden Contract, you know, he's a man in form. And you know, Kid Galahad's last fight was against Claudio Marrero, who's a very, very capable fighter. And he really did a good job on him. He really did a number on him. But that was over 18 months ago. Now, since then, Jazza Dickens has picked up those 2 big wins in the Golden Contract. And I think that's really evened it out. I think it's fair to say on the back of the Josh Warrington loss for Kid Galahad, which is, I scored the fight a draw. A lot of people had that going. It could have gone either way. I think it's fair to say that people would have picked that version of Kid Galahad as a favourite over Jazza Dickens. Now I'm not too sure. I think it's a much closer fight now. I think the form that Jazza Dickens has found himself in, and obviously buoyed by revenge, losing that first fight to Kid Galahad all of those years ago, do agree with Ant there. I do feel like featherweight suits them both better. But yeah, I think that the scales have probably tipped ever so slightly in Jazza Dickens' favour, purely based on the last 18 months and getting that activity, getting those rounds in against those quality fighters. While Barry, Kid Galahad, of course, has not been able to get back in the ring, and he was trying to get that Josh Warrington fight, and ultimately it fell through. So as close to a 50-50 fight as possible, but I do feel like the recent form and what's happened in the last 18 months do tip the scales ever so slightly more towards Jazza than they would have done if it was 18 months ago. Yeah,
we're going to talk a bit more about Fabio Wardley in a minute, but on the undercard as well, a couple of other big boys. Alan Babbage, he's on there against Mark Bennett. Now, I don't think you give Bennett too much of a chance. Many would, really. Babbage will be looking for another early night, I think. Johnny Fisher against Danny Whitaker, again, will be pretty short odds on that one. But then, now, in terms of the opportunities that have come the way of the women, there's another one now, Ebony Bridges, Bet Connolly. Now, Ebony Bridges is something of an enigma. She's really managed to market herself very, very successfully over here now. She's established pretty much in the UK. And again, a lot of talk about her because of the way she goes to the weigh-ins and everything else. What's the feeling from you two in terms of Ebony? Very good for women's boxing. Ebony, well, you're not so sure?
I think that she handled herself fantastic, in the Shannon Courtney build-up. And I think she was very honest and she made some great points. I remember there was a part where Shannon's saying, about is she disrespecting the women's game? And I think that Ebony was very honest, she said, I think because it was coming up to that fight. We're not Katie Taylor or Natasha Jonas. People aren't going to tune in just for that reason. So I'm going to give people something to talk about. But what impressed me the most that night was, although she talks, she got in there and she walks the walk as well.
Yeah.
She, a really bad eye injury. She fought through it. She's shown plenty of guts and shown she can actually fight. She can really fight. She's not just some, that I think a lot of people thought she was.
I think she's certainly shown as well that she's a very smart cookie as well. And again, having opportunities now. And Beck Connolly always comes and she's had a bit of preparation for this one, Beck, as well. So it could be interesting.
Yeah, she's been with them all, hasn't she? She's been in with them all. And it'd be a tough, like you say, it'll be a good assignment to see where Ebony's at.
Yeah, just to kind of, I agree again with Ant there. I think Ebony Bridges has marketed herself terrifically well. I mean, going into that Shannon Courtney fight, we'd not really seen her box. She'd gone, I think, 4 or 6 rounds with a mid-40s part-time boxer about 6 weeks before that fight. And I think people generally just didn't really know what to expect. She brought the intrigue. I think, obviously, my role in the job that I work in, we look at numbers and social media traffic and traction and stuff. And that fight was, was a bit of a show stealer. There was a lot of people with eyes on it for whichever way you want to put it. People were tuning in and really interested in that fight. But ultimately, the proof is in the pudding. Once you step through those ropes and the lights come down and you're on TV, you have to be able to fight. And Ebony Bridges really showed a lot in that fight. She showed skill, she showed heart, she showed that real grit to bite down on the gum shield. The last couple of rounds, she was very, very tired. She had one eye which was swollen shut. I think a lot of people would have forgiven her for potentially, taking the easy way out, or however you want to call it, and, calling it on the stall. And she never did. But yeah, she comes back into this now with an enhanced profile. Some have called her the Muhammad Ali of women's boxing, but we'll leave that one there. And she has a real fight on her hands in Bet Connolly. Bet Connolly is tough. She's taken many fights in the past at short notice. She's been well prepared for this fight. And she'll fancy her chances, of going in there and giving Ebony Bridges, who is still very inexperienced, a good fight on Saturday night. So yeah, I think she's good for boxing. She's certainly good for female boxing. Not everybody is going to be a God-fearing woman like a Katie Taylor or somebody like that. And you have to have these different types of characters, both in the men's code and the women's code, to get eyes on the sport. And she can clearly fight, and she's clearly in it for the right reasons. And if she's bringing attention and eyes to the sport, in my opinion, that's only a good thing.
Yep, when we get another look at Ebony this weekend. But of course, there is an English heavyweight title to be defended by Fabio Wardley. He's in against Nick Webb, which is intriguing given the way that both performed last time out in Gibraltar, with Webb's performance against Eric Pfeiffer, which was a real show stealer. If we're talking about show stealers, that was an impressive one. And obviously, with Wardley going in there against Molina and getting the job done. So a little bit earlier, producer Josh, he caught up with Fabio. And knowing Josh, he probably spoke about the Olympics, about all the heavyweight scene, fight camp. And if it's Josh, he'll be talking takeaways as well.
Joined here by Fabio Wardley, heavyweight sensation. First of all, Fabio, we spoke to you before your last fight over in Gibraltar. What did you make of that fight, looking back now?
Yeah, it was good. It was a good fight. There was a few kind of tidbits, bits to pick from it, bits to learn from. It wasn't like, don't get me wrong, I don't believe it was my best, most cleanest performance, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I got the job done. I got the win, and we're able to move forward. So that's what I'm happy with, and yeah, on to the next one. And
talking about on to the next one, that's this weekend against Nick Webb. What have you made of Nick Webb up until this point?
Yeah, he's done all right. He's had his ups and downs. He's had a few losses and he's had to come back from them. And he did well. Like I said, we was on the same bill before where I was fighting Molina and he fought Eric Pfeiffer. So he's coming off a good win. He's going to have some confidence behind him and stuff. So that should lead into a good fight.
And what can we expect from yourself? You said there are a few things that you wanted to improve on. I'm guessing you've done that in the gym in the build up to this fight. What can we expect from yourself on Saturday night?
Yeah, the same as what you always get: a good energy fight, a good pace, and then obviously a good amount of power in there, and finish it off and top everything off nicely with a knockout. That's what we're looking for, and we're going to be doing the same.
So this one not going to go the distance. It is one we're going to see end early.
Yeah, definitely. I think with both me and Nick in the ring, there's just no way it's gonna go the distance. Unfortunately, we're both big knockout artists, so we're going to see how it goes.
No, definitely. And in terms of fight camp, you obviously fought in that card in Gibraltar. Fight camp now, some really unique venues. What are you looking forward to about fighting on this fight camp show?
Yeah, going around to, like I said, I was one of the fortunate ones to fight on the first fight camp. So coming back a second time around, it's almost a bit like a homecoming because it's the place where I first picked up my English title, which is obviously on the line against Nick as well. So it's all coming a bit full circle for me to come back around. It'll only be a week to the day, actually, of when I first picked up my belt with Fight Camp, the first one. So, yeah, it's all come back around. It's going to be a great event. I'm looking forward to seeing how they kind of built on what they did last year with the shows and stuff, because even Fight Camp last year was a great spectacle. It was great to watch and just great to be a part of. But now, second time around, fine-tune it a bit more, get a few more details done and dusted, and, yeah, it should be a much better fight.
And with that being said, obviously we're about halfway through the year now, just over the halfway point in the year. On the back of this fight moving forward, what would how many times would you like to get out before the end of the year?
In an ideal world, maybe twice, but I think that leaves us a bit short in terms of time frame. So I think realistically, I can maybe squeeze one more out this year, depending on kind of what's going on and things and who else is fighting and what shows there are around. But definitely at least one more.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of your stablemate, Babik, he's also on this card. What can we expect from him?
Yeah, I think you know what you can get with him. It's always fireworks. He's always, I think even just, not even necessarily the fight, but even the bubble and all the time we're going to be in there in the build-up, he's always going to be running around causing carnage and chaos to everyone. So he's great to be in with, and I'm glad I'm on the side of him. I'm on his team as opposed to against him.
Definitely, and he's a real character, and the British public have really taken to him as well.
Yeah, they have. They've really got behind him because he is. They can tell with him that he's genuine. That as much as the savage and that different guy that he has, that other persona is not necessarily an act because he does necessarily have that in him, but it's a bit of a character which he's created, but it is genuine. That is how he views boxing, and that is how he views himself as a fighter. So I think the general public have realised that it's not fake. It's him, and they can kind of connect with that.
Definitely. And in terms of your manager and stuff as well, Dillian White, when can we next expect to see Dillian out? Any news on that?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what Dill's plans are in terms of when he's out. I think he is looking to get out in the next month or two. I think September time, but I don't know if there's any plans in place in terms of where or an opponent yet. To be honest, I've just been fully focused on myself, so it's not really something I've caught up with him about, to be fair.
And obviously, you are a heavyweight, and the heavyweight division, there's so much talent on these shores at the moment. Let me just ask you about the two big heavyweight fights. First of all, Anthony Joshua versus Yousek, which is going to be at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in September. Who do you see coming out on top in that one?
I think, if anything, right now, I'd edge it slightly to Joshua. If you'd have asked me when Yousek first turned into kind of the pro division, the heavyweight division once he transferred over from cruiserweight, I would have gone with him initially, but I think he's found that adjusting period into the heavyweight slightly more difficult than he initially anticipated. So he's not pulled off the best performances since he's been in the heavyweight division. So I think from then to then jump in with someone like Joshua is quite a big leap. Not to say that Yousek doesn't have the experience to deal with that, but just going off what we've seen, I think that's where I'd hedge it.
And then the other one, which is now set for October, is Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. Obviously, one draw and one win to Tyson. Do you see it being repeat or revenge in that one?
Yeah, I think it's repeat. I think it's quite clearly going to be a repeat, because I think with Wilder, he's been such a one-trick pony for so long that he just fell into the lull of that, and he became a victim of his own success. And then when it came to the point where that didn't work and he couldn't find a way around it, he didn't have a plan B. And I think it's too late in the day, too late in his game, in his career, to start making those quite large adjustments that he needs to make to become more adapted and suited to the kind of fighter in front of him that is Fury.
No, definitely. And you obviously had a very unique way of coming into the professional ranks. You didn't do the normal amateur route. You were involved in the white collar boxing. But what have you made of the Olympians that are currently out in Tokyo, and what they're bringing to the table?
Yeah, they're doing great. We're picking up medals every day, it seems. It's really good. I haven't been able to really catch too many of the fights or anything, but because we're always on at funny times. But I always see on social media and stuff, and always catch up on the little clips and stuff of how they're doing. So yeah, it's great. British boxing is doing well, not only in the pro game but also in the amateurs.
Definitely. And with some of the stars out there in Tokyo, obviously the amateurs, out of those, who would you think would be best suited to becoming professionals?
I think the most obvious one is Fraser. It's Fraser Clark. I think I probably have a bit more of an insight being a heavyweight that I've been around him. I've never sparred him or anything like that, but I've seen him in with other pros and stuff, and he just seems so comfortable with it. And he's been around it for a long time. So I think once he's done with the Olympics this time around, I think he will eventually go pro.
No, definitely. And when I last spoke to you, I know from watching your social media accounts, you're a big fan of Five Guys. Were you able to find the Five Guys out there in Gibraltar?
No, I wasn't able to find one out there, but that was high on the list when I got home.
And is there one near Eddie's former house at the Matchroom Square Garden? Is there a Five Guys?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. That's something I'm going to have to check actually to make sure there's one nearby or something. But no, I haven't checked it. But hopefully, fingers crossed.
Definitely. Well, best of luck Saturday night. Looking forward to it, and hopefully speak to you soon as well, Fabio.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
So as we heard, big Fabio there talking Five Guys, obviously, because Josh has made him talk about Five Guys. But he's obviously looking for some freebies. But apart from that, he was mentioning the Olympics. It's been a record medal haul, of course, from Team GB. And interesting to hear Fabio say that Fraser Clark would make a great pro. Would either of you two disagree with that? He's got a bronze medal now as well.
No, I wouldn't disagree with that. I'd agree. You know, Fraser's somebody who's very, very experienced now. He's been kind of the unfortunate. He's been always the bridesmaid, never quite the bride, really, when it comes to Team GB over the years. He's been in the same camps as your Joe Joyces, your Anthony Joshua's, and it was nice to see him getting his crack of the whip in the Olympics. Of course, unfortunately, coming up short against Bakadir Jalilov, the #1 seed from Uzbekistan. Well, on the receiving end of two horrible cuts in his previous bout against Aliyev, the Frenchman. So he was always going to be up against it, but obviously gave Bakadir Jalilov a standing count, really gave him something to think of. It was the type of fight that you would have liked to have seen go a few more rounds in a professional code just to see if he could have caught up with him. But yeah, a great performance overall for Fraser Clark. And now we look to wait and see what happens with him in the pros.
Yeah, I'm really interested with Big Fraser to see him in the pros, as it's been a long time coming. And I think you can't help but think or want, good things for the man after like persistence he's shown, sort of the bounce back ability he's shown just to go to the Olympics, never mind medal there. I think one thing's for sure. Again, I know he's an heavyweight, so the age, you normally let him go a bit long, a bit later. However, we will have to move him pretty fast. I think they'll have to move him pretty fast because of the age. And I think also you look at, he's been around for a few series of the World Series of Boxing. I'm almost sure that you see the company he's been in. And even in the semi-final, I think you managed to hit 7-0 as a pro or 8-0 as a pro. Have I got that right? Yeah. So it's he's in with good company already. So I think within an handful of fights, certainly he'll be looking to fight for British titles for sure.
Yeah, well, we can have a full look back to Team GB's finished product, if you like, next week. But it has been a great Olympics for the team. Now, of course, we are looking forward to another big fight on the horizon as well. Now, this is going to be very lively. There's no doubt about it. It's a Merseyside Derby. And Crolla, you've been involved with many Manchester derbies yourself. You always came out on top, actually. They were always very good for you, the Manchester Derby. But it is very unique and it's a very special thing. But when your old mate, Liam Smith, gets in there with Anthony Fowler, as we now know they will on October the 9th, that is going to be, well, fantastic, isn't it? The build-up, everything about it. You look at who they've been in with, different stages of their careers, the Liverpool thing.
It's going to be a great night. I think, like you said, I was very fortunate in local derbies, but it just adds that bit of tension to it, a bit of an edge to it. There'll be people there who've bought tickets to go and watch Anthony Fowler, who've also bought tickets to watch Liam Smith, and they're going to have to pick a side in a way. Yeah. It's going to be a packed out arena, great atmosphere. I can't wait for it. I love, like you say, I reckon there'll be a bit of needle behind it as well. It's a great fight and one that I'm really looking forward to.
Well, let's just find out from Liam, of course, who you've shared the gym with for years and years and years. Firstly, how this whole thing came about. Well, Liam, big news, of course. There's going to be a Merseyside Derby. So we've got to start with this, of course, yourself and Anthony Fowler, the 9th of October at the arena, the M&S Arena. It is now in Liverpool, of course. So again, just give us a little bit of an idea how it came about, because I know you had options of fighting overseas. There's been lots of talk of Jesse Vargas. There was an opportunity in Australia. So tell us how the Fowler fight came about.
The Fowler fight got mentioned on Eddie. That's where it stemmed from my point of view. Obviously, it's been mentioned by others and whatnot because we're both from Liverpool. But I seen Eddie mentioning it in an interview for Fowler. So I just thought, well, I didn't really take too well to it. So I phoned my manager and said, phone Eddie in town to make that fight. I thought, if you're going to talk about it, don't really talk about it and not offer it, you know what I mean? So I said basically phone him and make the fight now, and to be honest with you, he has made the fight now, so that's where we're at, and that's what's next.
Give us a bit of a feeling what it will mean to Liverpool, because we've seen these kind of fights before. Your brothers have been involved in them. Your Paul had a derby, was it with Quigley a while ago?
Yeah.
And
I was just about to say that, yeah, with Quigley and Dodson. You was there at both of them.
I can't put my finger on why kind of, and this is a bad thing to say, but it's a big fight in Liverpool and it should be split. And I can't believe how he hasn't had the Scouts Derby yet. We've had 3, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's a bit of a strange one. Obviously, I'm not going to say he's disliked, but it's obviously you were probably both there at the Echo Arena last time. He had Scousers cheering that he lost to Fitzgerald, and I felt sorry for him on that night. Scousers were buzzing that he lost, and I thought that's a bit of a strange one. So it's a bit of a sticky one to put your finger on why, but the reaction of the fight being announced has gone down well either way, whether it be good on his part and bad on mine, or good on mine and bad on his part. But it's gone down. The reaction's good.
The other one that we haven't mentioned, the more obvious one, is Callum against Rocky Fielding, obviously as well, which was
that's what again. We've had 3. We've had Paul Dodson, so we've had us against Speak, we've had us against Quigley and Kirby, and we've had us against Fielding. So obviously if we've got dislikes, it could be anything to do with that, But I'm just very surprised that obviously now I'm going into the fight. Obviously, the things I've read and from people close to home, and then obviously you don't have to touch back. I boxed on the same bill against Sam Eglinton, and scouts were cheering when he lost, and I thought it was a bit of a strange one.
The thing is, though, there's a lot of connections already between yourself and Fowler. I mean, Callum boxed him twice as an amateur, didn't he? And it was one apiece on that one. And I think people forget that Fowler's closer to age than you than people might realise. I mean, he's 30, you're 33. I think he's still considered this rising star. You've been there for a while now, world champion and all the rest of it. But there's the closer connections, really, than people realise.
Yeah, of course. And obviously people are getting it mixed up, the fact that, like, why has he took it? And why wouldn't he take it? And this is the point being, he's 30. He's nearly 31. He's got to take this fight. The fight was offered to him in the game. We know how the promoting works. Eddie will have just made him an offer that he can't refuse. He's made him, option A, me, for X amount of money, and maybe a comeback fight if he loses, or if he wins, you're getting better the game. Or option B will be, you can just fight somebody like Rico Muller, who you just fought again for a lot less money. So Eddie will have made it a no-brainer for him. Anthony Fowler hasn't once said, look, I want Liam Smith next. Never. You pull me an interview where he says he wants to fight me, and then I'll take that sentence back. But the fight's been offered to him, and he's accepted it. He's a fighter. He should accept it, and he's a fighter, and he should believe he can win.
Now, I know that you're going to be super confident, naturally, as you should be. That's what it's all about. But Anthony, from your point of view, because obviously you've trained so closely with Beefy for so many years, and I know you've always been impressed with his skill set and everything else. And again, give us your kind of thoughts on how you see this fight now. Be as kind of impartial as you can, if you like.
Yeah, well, I've got to be having her. But no, I was speaking with Shane McGuigan at the launch of The Zone last week, and we were having a chat, and I mentioned about this fight coming about. I knew it was going to get announced Saturday. And I think Shane will tell you, like he was saying about the fight. And I think very much what Liam said, I think Eddie and the team have been smart in what they've offered Anthony for that and certain fights. Possibly Liam. I don't know, only you could answer that. But they're confident. I said this, Liam, Shane says they're confident to get Liam out of there. And I said, well, I've got to back Liam with him being my mate. However, if he wasn't my mate, I'd still back Liam. And that's no disrespect to Fowler or anything like that. But I just believe Liam, and I think it's your first sort of Merseyside derby, isn't it, for yourself, Liam? Yeah. And I think Liam knows what's at stake here. There's bragging rights. And it's these, especially in a fighting city like Liverpool at the Echo, it's going to be packed out. These nights get talked about for years. These nights, and I think Liam wants to show his class. And then the winner of this then moves on to look towards challenging for world titles. I know Liam wants that now. But I certainly think there's no way Liam, I'm not speaking for him, overlooks Anthony Fowler because of what's at stake.
Right, well, I was into with Shane, and to be honest with you, I think they're probably thinking that. I think Shane's probably in Fowler's ear will be in his ear every day. You can win this, you can do this. Look, he'll do this, he'll do that. You can win it, and I think Anthony's going to need Shane on his shoulder fucking every step of the way. For we've got a long time. We've got 9 weeks, and we've got a lot to deal with. And what you're saying, we've been through these derbies before. I've been through big fights. Anthony Fowler's not my biggest fight. I'm Anthony Fowler's biggest fight, and again, I'm not saying that being big-headed. I'm not saying that like overlooking him. I got a comment the other day saying, because I said that I think after 4 rounds I'll go through, like a knife through butter. I said and someone said that insulting him. How the fuck's that an insult? I said I think he's a good fighter. He does lots of things well, but I think he reverts back to what he does after 4 rounds. He runs out of ideas of that sharp jab, and he goes back to what he does. And I think once the fight settles after 4, I think I'll just gradually keep getting to him, and I think I'll get to him. And someone said to me that's an insult. Show me where that's an insult.
You know what I mean? One thing I think is definitely going to be a lot of fun, Liam, is the build-up, because Anthony isn't shy of a bit of chat. Again, you've got enough to say as well, and that could be quite funny, I think. Again, do you think that that's what will really get the interest once you two kind of come head to head And if you like it, I mean, people outside of Liverpool, I'm talking about now, will really buy into it after that.
Yeah, but obviously, I'm you know, whatever I say, I'll stand by and put a camera on or turn the camera off and turn the cameras away, and I'll whatever I say, I'll say off camera. I'm not going to get into his games where you'll see. You've obviously seen what he was like with Fitzgerald. You've seen how vocal he is with other people. You know, we'll see if he's that same, you know, the same Anthony Fowler what he has been with myself. If he wants to play them games, he can play them games with cameras in front of him, but he's got to stick to it when the cameras are not in front of him. And that's what I think he knows. You know, he knows with me. I'm not going to sit at the top table in press conference and let him give me hell and think he's funny and big in front of a camera. If he's going to do that, he's going to have to back that up and do it away from the cameras. And that's what I mean by, you know, he's not going to sit and play the games with Fitzgerald what he played with me, because he knows I'm a different person than Scott Fitzgerald.
Just on a final kind of point, and Anthony, obviously you'll have your thoughts on this, but it's you spent a lot of time with Anthony in Bolton with Joe Gallagher. Now, your last fight, obviously, you went over to Russia against Kurbanov. It didn't go your way. I think you probably, you know, thought, unless I take him out there, I might not get the nod. It's one of them. You take the gamble on that. But you with Joe McNally, Declan O'Rourke, back where it all started, really, back at the Rotunda. That's where you're going to stay. Is that the idea? That's for the final chapter, if you like, of your career?
Yeah, but you know, obviously, I think with the Russia fight, it was all last minute. You know, Russia went out to America, come back, and you know, we found out my missus is pregnant again, and it's just all very rushed last minute. So I had 5 weeks to go. So you know, I chose Joseph and Declan, and again, I enjoyed the camp. I think they were two very good coaches, two very enthusiastic coaches, and I've knew them my whole life. So. I think, you know, it was no reason and no fault of theirs why I never got the decision out in Russia. I enjoyed the 5 weeks I had with them, and I think now it's only fair that we have a full camp. And you know, I'm excited for this full camp, and you know, I think they know Anthony Fowler just as well as I know him. They've seen him coming through the amateurs along the way. So yeah, I think it's only fair that, you know, we knuckle down and we have a full camp together.
Anything to add to that, Anthony?
No, listen, I'm looking forward to the fight, and I think Liam made a good point there with Joe Mack and Declan. They've been around boxing for a long time, great coaches, and not just that, like I say, they would have seen Anthony Fowler. The time they spent in the amateurs, they'll know Anthony Fowler very well. So no, I think that just adds to the excitement of, you know, if you go back, it's not, listen, we know how strongly the amateur clubs are in Liverpool. They've got a great amateur system, and how I've always been massively impressed how the locals get behind their finals and stuff like that. The atmosphere is unreal, but it gives that little bit of, could it go back to start, you know, Rotunda, Golden Gloves, two unbelievable clubs. You know, it has that. It's a big night. It's just a big night for Liverpool boxing in general. And like I say, I'm genuinely excited for it.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Well, thanks for your time, Liam.
No problem, mate. Nice one.
You can listen to Liam Smith all day. He's so animated. And of course, we will get the thoughts of Anthony Fowler as we build up to that fight. But that just makes me want to see that fight next week. I don't know about you, fellas.
Yeah, I mean, it is the classic type of changing of the guard fight, you know. In the kind of the modern era of boxing, it feels like we don't see these fights as much anymore. You sort of see people try and navigate their way to the top level and then do those fights for big money, so to speak, or for a world title. But you know, this is the type of fight that we've seen in boxing over hundreds of years. You know, the classic ex-champion, potentially not quite the force he once was, and Liam Smith, albeit boxed at a very, very high level against, I wouldn't quite call Anthony Fowler young. He is, of course, 30 with a lot of amateur experience behind him, but the younger, shall we say, whippersnapper coming up. And I think it's a really closely matched fight. I think it's fair to say Anthony Fowler will be having to jump up in levels to a level that we've not seen in box as a professional. Whereas Liam Smith, you know, how much does he have left? He's had a lot of hard fights. He's been paid very well throughout his career. And yeah, it's one of those fights that really will whet the appetite. I think it started off quite respectful in the kind of the pre-fight jibes, but I think by the time fight week comes around, I'm expecting quite a lot of spice. So yeah, really looking forward to that one. It's a great fight.
And of course, plenty this weekend. We've mentioned Fight Camp. Fight Zone is in London as well this weekend. York Hall is a special night there. Isaacs against Morley topping the bill. And there's some action, Northern Ireland, and some action, I should say, because whenever Mick Conlon is back home, it is an occasion, as it will be in the Falls Park for the Failer at the weekend again, when he takes on TJ Doheny in an all-Irish affair. So again, some great things to look forward to there. And from Boxing Social's point of view, Rob, what's going on? And Anthony, we always like your final thoughts on Love Island and everything else. So Rob, first, your week.
Well, my week doesn't really consist of too much Love Island, but yeah, we've got a lot coming up on Boxing Social. Of course, we'll be in attendance and covering the remaining fight camp shows. So please look out for all of the fight camp coverage and, of course, Conlan Doheny coverage on Boxing Social. Got a few things up our sleeve, so keep your eyes peeled across Boxing social media channels. I can't tell too much just yet, but just to whet the appetite, there will be a few bits and pieces coming up. So be sure to stay tuned and have a look at Boxing Social.
And apart from Love Island, Dan, you're going to be in London this weekend with me, aren't you?
I am, lucky enough, yes. An overnight with you, mate. So at York Hall, at the very special York Hall, Bethnal Green, always a great atmosphere. And for one place you want to see crowds back, it's there, the home of British boxing, in a lot of people's opinions. So yeah, obviously regarding Love Island, it's I said it last week. Casa Amor was really going to shake things up. I'm sure Rob will agree it did just that. Not just that, I think Liam, he thought he'd lost his girl, but he got his girl back. Lost his pride, but he got his girl back. And it's going to be an interesting few days now to see how, after last night's recoupling.
If anyone's in any doubt, Anthony $1 Million Crolla actually won a world title once, if you can believe that. I don't know what to do. Who knows? Anyway, there you are, Anthony's roundup. Thanks very much, Rob, as well. And yeah, we'll see you for the Betfred Boxing Show again next week.